Just never quite had the right technique because of being a double leg amputee. I had to do a lot of pioneering to work out the best way to swim, missing that balance of my lower body. And one of my first sessions in Canberra, he said, "Jesse, you swim like old lady." I won't do a full Ukrainian accent, but you can imagine. "Jesse, you swim like old lady. It's fantastic. I make you an athlete." Well, for me, when I dream, I usually have legs as well. I think that's kind of a projection of what I see around me as opposed to like that internal reflection.
What does it take to turn disability into gold, both in the pool and in life? Paralympic gold medalist Jesse shows us how resilience, self-belief and inclusion can shape a stronger and more compassionate world.
It was a home games on the Gold Coast, which was insane. And I just swam a bit of a rough heat swim in the morning. And I had an Australian and a Canadian kind of breathing down my neck for the gold medal. And
now a celebrated gold medal winning athlete. You get to speak with lots of young children. What have been some of those memorable moments that you've had?
I get called a robot a lot. A lot of memorable ones are the looks on parents' faces when my wife Ashley says he didn't eat his vegetables and that's why he doesn't have his legs. Usually he's very thankful, the looks on parents' faces for that one.
Jesse, thank you so much for making the time. I've met you very briefly at Floriade and asked you a question about a podcast. Thank you for saying yes. Always been a fan of yours, but more so with my young children, watching you in the pool, having conversations with my eldest daughter about not having to be perfect to compete, and watching that illuminate her has always been very, very interesting for me.
Yeah, that's cool.
In the pool, when you're about to start a race, what goes through your mind? I've heard the cliche of, Olympic athletes, they don't get scared, they don't get worried.
They do. Yeah.
They replace all of that with the word excitement and it's perfect. But can you just step me through what goes through your mind? What's that thought process?
I think there are some Olympic and Paralympic athletes who actually genuinely don't get scared, and that's crazy. I don't know how they do that. I think either they're a little bit psychopathic or they just have like very relaxed vibes. Like someone that comes to mind is like Carl Chalmers. He's just like a country Australian kid and he is just so chill wherever he is, whether that's like on pool deck at training, like competing in front of like, I don't know how many people are watching like an Olympic broadcast, like 3-4 billion people. He just, it's like a normal training day for him. So I remember watching that coming into Rio, because like obviously the Olympics takes place just before the Paralympics, and I was fortunate to grow up kind of in a similar environment with Kyle, and kind of knowing him personally, I was like, that's pretty cool. Like I'd really love to emulate that, especially as he was like kind of a little kid in like the younger squads than I was, and seeing him up there just so calm and collected, it was like pretty inspiring and gave me a lot of focus for my first games in Rio, which despite that is still terrifying. I think no matter how many times you do it, there's something really special about like coming out and just like seeing like the whole stadium, because we're not like a football code or something where we get that every weekend, which I think would be amazing. But I think in some ways you might kind of have enough practice that you maybe tune that out. But doing it every 4 years, it still has that like very special ring to it, and like you're always nervous. So I remember stepping out for my first race at my first Paralympic Games in Rio and just being absolutely terrified. Like my fingers are going a bit numb because I was so nervous. But like when you're actually doing the race, there's just nothing. You're in that flow state where like everything just takes over. Like you can't be really thinking of anything else, and your brain is so practiced in what you're doing that like it just takes over no matter how nervous you are, at least for me. I have had races like Com Games 2018. It was a home games on the Gold Coast, which was insane. And I just swam a bit of a rough heat swim in the morning, and I had an Australian and a Canadian kind of breathing down my neck for the gold medal, and like with my family in the stands, like all of them for the first time, and like a home games, I think the pressure kind of like was getting to me. It was the first time that I had been kind of the hunted instead of the hunter, and it was messing with my head a bit. And that was the first time I kind of remember being psyched out in my head during the swim. And like usually you're just in this zone where like time kind of no longer exists and it's just the process of like focusing your technique or your race plan, whatever it is. But I remember in that race being like, where is everyone? And oh my God, I can hear the crowd and all of that stuff. And it was a terrible race. Thankfully, I'd done enough just to pull it off and touch the wall first, which made for an exciting race for the crowd, which is good. Um, but yeah, like that's kind of the only time I ever remember not being just like fully focused once I hit the water. And then like obviously behind the blocks, you have all those nerves, but they calm really quickly. And just on what you were saying before about your daughter, not how did you phrase it about her?
So how I was showing her the races that the Paralympic athletes were taking place in your race specifically is she's 6 and she thinks that, you've got to have the perfect physique, the perfect
No.
mindset. And I'm like, yes, but your definition of perfect can be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just gotta. I think the main thing is enjoying it. I really love being in the water. And as a kid, like I was never particularly quick. I think I was really lucky to have a lot of really good coaches. But I think I developed a little bit late and also maybe was a bit stubborn and um, just never quite had the right technique because of being a double leg amputee. I had to do a lot of pioneering to work out the best way to swim, missing that balance of my lower body. So it took until I was like 18 to actually be winning any races or anything. Like I came to Canberra because the head coach here at the AIS, Yuri, even though I wasn't that quick compared to a lot of my competitors at the time, he saw that I just absolutely loved the sport and I enjoyed pushing myself and just like being amongst my teammates and the social aspect. So he was like, this is someone who's got like all these other elements around just the passion for it. And one of my first sessions in Canberra, he said, Jesse, you swim like old lady. I won't do a full Ukrainian accent, but you can imagine. Jesse, you swim like old lady. It's fantastic. I make you an athlete. Because my technique was just so atrocious. Although Yuri also did know there are many, many fast old ladies who would absolutely tear up the pool AIS. But in terms of my technique, there was a lot to be wanting. And I did 4 months of solid technical work with Yuri, which was very different to kind of the endurance and fitness training that I'd done a lot of beforehand. We kind of pared it back. Some sessions I was only doing 800 meters, so there's really different approach. Really thinking about things like from a technical perspective. And I went from maybe being like 4th or 5th in Australia and being nowhere near international level in less than 6 months, qualifying for 2014 Commonwealth Games. So yeah, just like that underlying passion, I think is the most important thing. And definitely like that support network as well. Like I was very lucky to have some real key people there.
Jesse, in that framing, is it fair to say if you were thrown the question of, are you born or built?
Yeah.
Is it more a built process for you where you had the right coach, you had the right mindset, and then you kept improving to what the sport needed you to be, but the passion was what kept going, helping you go through?
Yeah, absolutely. I love a binary question because I think it's always thought-provoking because I think something that like a lot of humans pick up on without realizing is like in a binary question, there's so much complexity. And when you put forward 2 options, everyone's like, no, but this. And yeah, absolutely. I think I'm very lucky. We've had a bit of swimming pedigree in my family. My granddad was a very good butterflyer and 400 freestyler. And yeah, learned to swim at a very young age, which is fortunate for me as well. That like I think that's like culturally in Australia helped me a lot that I was learning to swim before I can even remember. Just as a bit of like also a bit of like therapy to learn to use my prosthetics at the time. But in terms of yeah, I think what's a good one? We have it on our whiteboard at the moment. My coach Laura's put it up for this month. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So yeah, there's definitely that percentage contribution of like, you might just be born a Michael Phelps, but if Michael Phelps didn't have the passion for it, yeah, I mean, I don't think he'd be where he got to. So yeah, it's definitely a balance. And I think I'm probably more on like that, like 30%, like maybe have a little bit of the swimming pedigree, but really not much, especially compared to some of my competitors. But I just absolutely love it. And I think being able to endure maybe some more difficult sessions or push myself to absolutely the limit whenever I need to, but then step back and take that analytical approach and swim like 800 meters. It's kind of stressful when you feel your competitors, you're like, oh, they're doing a 5K session today and I'm only doing 800 meters. Sometimes there's a bit of that mind game of focusing on the process and not like getting too carried away with any anxieties or whatever about not measuring up. And I think I'm really good at that these days. A lot of my coaches have tempered me and kind of supported me to get lots of benefits out of that. And I think in that evidence, I've had a pretty good approach that I think makes up for perhaps where I'm a little bit behind my competitors in just having really good technique. And just one quick example, in Tokyo, I was probably the fittest I've ever been. But since then, so it's 2021, I've been working full time. So I've never been able to quite devote as much time to the pool and gym and everything like that. So in Paris, I knew I was maybe like that 1% down on fitness, but I did exactly the same time as I did in Tokyo, just because I knew where I had to focus on. I kind of stripped back my program to make sure that I was like nailing my turns, just some small little 0.1 percenters to make up that 1% that I might not have been able to do otherwise. So yeah.
And that's the experience coming through. That's the maturity coming.
Yeah.
So I'm in the pool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another binary question based on what you were saying.
Love it.
From the framing of hunter versus the hunted,
Yeah.
how does that mindset play a role when you're in the pool, when you're competing?
I'm almost always hunting. It's a shock when I'm the hunted, and I think that's why I really struggled. I think most days I am just like very much in the process and not thinking about that. Some days when I need a little bit of extra motivation, like everyone gets like those days where it's early in the morning and you're like, oh, not today. Like it's a cold Canberra morning. I want to stay in bed. And sometimes I go to thinking about what are my competitors doing like this morning. So in terms of like trying to compare myself to them to motivate myself, because like just gives that a little kick of adrenaline and gets me out of bed. But in terms of like that comparison, I think I'm fortunate that I have almost always been hunting, and I think it's what you get used to a little bit is kind of what you thrive in. And that's it was a huge shock in Paris. For our relay, we just had no expectations about where we were gonna rank against the rest of the field, even through the heats. In Paralympics or in all swimming, you can swap out your relay team members. And so you really don't know what you're expecting coming into the finals. And we were a fair bit behind. But our strategy was to come home really hard at the end. And yeah, we were just shocked when we finally took the lead. Kind of couldn't believe that it's real, having like even our strategy was hunting the other teams. So yeah, I guess it's a mix of like being comfortable in the approach, and sometimes you need to be perhaps prepared for if there's a switch. And also just like that process focus. Like sometimes when you need to block out your competitors, you're just in your own zone.
Winning is wonderful, but winning is not always your reality.
Yeah. No.
What do you do from a mental resilience perspective when you just miss out on a podium finish by a few milliseconds?
It's tough. I've had a lot of fourths. I think it depends on the context as well. Like, I think the toughest defeat is probably missing teams. Like when you're just shy of a qualification for an Australian team, that is pretty brutal because there's kind of like it's very hard to positive self-talk your way out of that. Like if you're fourth on the world stage, you're like, wow, like I can be very proud of myself. Um, like that's such a privilege to even be there. But if you put in so much effort and then like you don't make a team, like that's the end of the road for that year, which has happened to me a couple of times. Um, it is really hard, and I think it's relying on your support network in that moment. Like I'll always go and talk to my partner or my wife, Ash, and my mum as well, who's been there through like the whole journey. Yeah, I think just like I can't even like yeah pinpoint what it is that they have said, but just like talking to them makes me feel better. And of course, my coach as well kind of brings me back to the process bit. Like I'll debrief with them if I haven't made a team, and we'll whether it's the night that the selection gets announced or immediately after the race and I haven't done the time, um, or like a day later when we're just doing a bit of a regroup and thinking about what's ahead. It's getting back to that process, which helps a lot as well.
And sometimes it's not a trained professional that you need always.
No.
Sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's somebody who knows you really well. And I love the fact that you can't always pinpoint what they said, but you know they were there for you. How would you advise someone who's just missed out on a team and, who's put in that sometimes 3, 4, 5 years of effort to get there? What are one or two quick bounce back strategies that have worked for you? Is it watching game tape? Is it, watching something you've missed out on? Is it practicing something else? Is it taking a little bit of a break from something? What are one or two of those strategies that have worked for you?
Yeah, I guess it's very individual because I would say absolutely not watching a game tape because I will watch that and I will cringe and be horrified by all the things I could have done right to correct and maybe change the outcome. But on that same vein, that might really work for someone because I would also say that like if people are in that situation or like whatever the stakes are, if you've worked really hard for something and it hasn't worked out, I think like focusing on the outcome, I think is sometimes at the expense of being proud of yourself for all the hard work you've done. And I think that's probably the most important thing. And then, yeah, like surrounding yourself with like the people that love you. I think, yeah, they can do a lot to bring you up as well. And remind you of all the hard work you put in and why you should be proud of yourself. And yeah, just being in people's presence who love you makes a huge difference. Obviously, like that's not really a word of wisdom. I think everyone just innately kind of knows that. But I think sometimes we isolate ourselves in those situations. And I think reaching out and being open is like really has helped me a lot. So
that is wisdom, Jesse. I've known of wonderful Australian cricket coaches, aka Justin Langer, who got the team to watch back game tape, them losing, and everyone was crying. Sometimes the intentions are really good. The intentions are based around continuous improvement, but the human being just needs a moment.
Yeah.
Before you can continuously improve, you gotta heal a little bit. Jesse, you built courage, resilience, experience, all of those things. If you can go back and speak to a very young version of you, maybe a 5-year-old Jesse, maybe a 10-year-old Jesse, that was sometimes having to adjust to not having your legs, on having to, walk differently to somebody, having to answer a question of, are you okay? What would you advise that Jesse then, knowing the life that you built now and how you built strength and courage and even inspired other people?
Yeah, I'll thank you. There's a lot of lovely words in there, and that's adjectives. Without being too cliche, I feel like young me would also be able to teach old me some things. I feel like I was very courageous, a little bit too courageous as a young kid as well. I think in some ways, perhaps a response to growing up with a disability, I had to be quite courageous. Also, I think just like I was very lucky growing up with my mum, like she definitely taught me to be fairly courageous as well. And I think the fascinating thing is I remember I would have been maybe 10, maybe a little bit younger, maybe 8 or 9. And I looked in the mirror. I didn't have a mirror in my room. We had like a mirror in the bathroom, which is like shoulders up, but the only full body mirror was in my mum's room, which I didn't go in very often. And it probably had been like 4, 5 months, and I went in while I had my prosthetics on, and I was like, oh yeah. I don't have legs. It just wasn't something. I was very precocious, very confident, and I think I just like naturally wanted to do absolutely everything a bit too fearlessly, my poor mum. And I think because you like see everyone else around you, you kind of, but you don't often like look down at yourself, and especially as like a younger kid. I was kind of shocked looking in the mirror. I had completely forgotten for like months at a time that I like had a disability. It just didn't really cross my mind, and I think most of the time as well because the majority of people are around are able-bodied. Well, for me, when I dream, I usually have legs as well. I think that's kind of a projection of what I see around me as opposed to like that internal reflection. So yeah, as a kid, just like getting on with my business was just so easy. And I wish I could kind of go back and just see like kind of that bit of an ignorance is bliss kind of thing. Just being a little kid and having fun and not worrying about things too much, I think is pretty amazing. But I think I definitely did have doubts in terms of being a very competitive kid. While I kind of just got on with things, I definitely was probably slower in running races and slower on like the footy field and things like that, which I just loved. I just loved like getting amongst it. But part of me did have a lot of doubts about my abilities, kind of probably being one of the slower ones in the squad, and all those sorts of things. And having those doubts, but having those dreams of being a Paralympic athlete, it would just be so reassuring to my younger self to be able to go back and see the just insane career that I've had. I've been so fortunate. I had been in the right place at the right time and put in a lot of hard work for those results, but I just never believed that could have happened. So I think just like being able to share my life path with my younger kid or my younger self would give me so much more self-belief that I could do it and not have so much anxiety about not measuring up when I was younger.
You said you were stubborn. You said you had
Very.
passion. What role did did those characteristics play in you wanting to be a swimmer? But I'm also keen to understand the role your mum had to play. She's raising her son, who is stubborn, who wants to be an athlete. So there has to be some tension there while she will support you with all of these things. Like, what were some of those early years like, going for training, doing your studies? I don't think you're somebody who, gave up on one thing and focused on the other. You balanced it out. What were some of those formative years like, and what was that relationship with your mum like?
Honestly, so lucky. I don't say thank you enough to her. I think we all kind of come to that realization at some point when we're adults, how grateful we are for our parents. And I was just really lucky. Mum was really balanced, especially as primarily a single mother. She never pushed too hard on anything. It wasn't like she was living vicariously through me for her swimming dreams or anything. It was always kind of like she wanted me to have the agency in my own swimming. And I think that taught me a lot about, I guess, myself and managing myself. And I think it's very easy to get into a bit of like learned helplessness or whatever, where you kind of expect other people to kind of guide you a lot. And I'm just so lucky that mum was like that real good amount of like motivation, but not pushing. Like for example, in the mornings, I would get up first, even from like very young age. She was like, if you want to go to training, I'm going to get up there was a point where we were getting up at 3:57 a.m. And she would obviously like help me out, make a smoothie and all that sort of stuff before training and drive me there. But I would have to be the one to wake her up, was kind of what she said, because sometimes it's a little bit too early and I wouldn't even get up. So what's the point in her wasting her time? So she really wanted me to be certain that's what I wanted to do. and that I was kind of like leading the charge, and she was right there alongside with me, supporting me, but was always giving me kind of the agency and like, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, and if you do want to do it, you're the captain of your own ship in this regard. In terms of tension, yeah, my poor mother, I was so bloody stubborn. It's terrible. Um, Definitely reflected on that a lot, and wish I had been less stubborn, but I think it definitely helped in terms of my drive, and my passion for wanting to be competitive and wanting to win. I think you need a bit of stubbornness, but my poor mom definitely suffered from my hard-headed approach sometimes, yeah.
And a very responsible child?
No. Yeah, actually, yes. I was pretty boring, like, because I had so many dreams about swimming. I wasn't really going out partying or anything like that. Very, very focused. I wasn't the best at school. It was a bit distracting for the other kids when I was younger, but I got into a pretty good groove from like year 5, year 6 onwards, being very, very boring. I spent a lot of time around a lot of the older athletes as I kind of got into a bit of like a more of a competitive stream with being in like the Paralympic side. I was probably like I was 9 at my first international competition, so pretty young.
Right.
And then I would have been kind of put in alongside kind of the other people who were at international competition level, when I was 14 or 15, who were 19, 20. So I feel like they dragged me up in terms of I couldn't be like immature in that kind of environment. So I was very fortunate to grow up quite quickly through that exposure to swimming as well.
Jesse, when it comes to younger athletes that have physical challenges, what are some of those words of wisdom you can offer them when the challenge is actually getting too much for them, when they're tired, when they feel like, hey, why am I not like the other children? What are some of those words of wisdom that you can offer?
Yeah, I think just asking yourself, um, what am I doing here? Like, do I love it? What do I get out of it? And sometimes the answer doesn't have to be, yeah, I love it. Like sometimes you get a lot out of something, even though it's a difficult challenge. And it's a tough question to ask yourself, especially as a younger kid. Like, what am I doing here? But I think reflecting on that, I think kids are a lot more capable than we sometimes give them credit for. Um, but I also think like there's a lot of other aspects to think about. To think about like the social aspect. Are they enjoying that? Like that's really important. To be in an environment that's supportive and you've got your friends in. And so yeah, if you're struggling with things, I think it's about reflecting on that, and thinking about the bits that you enjoy, and if you can perhaps find those elsewhere as well. So like trying a different sport or trying a different club. I think that's a really positive thing to try, especially when you're younger, because yeah, like it's. I think not necessarily speaking from experience, but a lot of other people around me when I was younger had a lot of pressure on them to like uh, perform. And I think that when you're young, I think enjoying it is really important. And I think the competition can kind of take over. And you're still just finding yourself, like who you are, what you enjoy. Like, do you want to do tennis? Like, do you want to, like, even I tried wheelchair tennis and ambulant tennis and enjoyed like ambulant tennis a bit more, but overall swimming was kind of the thing for me. So you really need to explore the world and what you enjoy, to find the things that you love. And I'm sure there's something out there for everyone. Even if it's not sport, it might be music or something like that. Yeah, I think trying your hand while you're young is really important. So just communicating to the people around you, whether it's your parents or your coach at your swim club, how you're feeling and what the things you enjoy are, and perhaps what the things you don't enjoy are. And if some of the things that you don't enjoy can't be changed, um, in that environment, the change can be hard, but sometimes it's worthwhile in the long run because there is so many amazing branching opportunities out there for you, and trying them all can be an amazing experience as well.
In your capacity of now a celebrated gold medal winning athlete, you get to speak with lots of young children. What have been some of those memorable moments that you've had?
I get called a robot a lot. A lot of memorable ones are the looks on parents' faces when my wife Ashley says he didn't eat his vegetables and that's why he doesn't have his legs. Um, Usually, it's very thankful the looks on parents' faces for that one. Um, there's been some really, really cool
Ashley's
ones.
wit.
Ashley, yeah, she's great, isn't she? Yeah, yeah. Because I growing up, I've just been so used to like the eyes. I mean, I don't even notice. It's always Ashley that clocks it, and she's really good at engaging with families and kids and stuff. And she's always like, "Isn't it cool? Like he's a robot, like," and really brings kids out of their shell in a way that often parents are like shushing their kids and really afraid to offend anyone. And I get the instinct is fair, but I think a natural instinct is usually not harmful, and it's really cool to leave that positive, friendly experience with kids, so that next time they're probably a little bit more educated and they take a really positive, friendly outlook into engaging with people that maybe don't fit into the status quo as much. Yeah, I can't remember what the question was. I got distracted by how cool
No,
Ashley tackles a lot of those challenges.
which is wonderful because she does a good job of it. But what I was trying to get to was, what are some of those moments that you've had memorable interactions with
Mhm.
kids? And yes, they should eat their vegetables, which is part of that.
Yeah,
My kids
yeah,
also.
absolutely, yeah. I think a really cool one was I went to see my family after the 2018 Com Games, being a home games. Yeah, it was crazy. I will never feel like a celebrity again, but like having lines of people, a huge crowd, I was like causing a scene. It was immediately after my race. The stand was packed with 80,000 people, and yeah, I just had like a whole circle around me of people wanting to sign things and things like that, and just to chat to me. And yeah, it was an interesting experience of feeling a bit like a celebrity, but very memorable. And I think there are lots of like swimming kids in the stands, kind of like in real key moments of their journey, like reflecting on my journey around like the 12, 13 years old when I was just kind of getting serious. And that kind of thing would have been just amazing being able to go to a home games. And yeah, just chatting to them about their swimming careers. A lot of it was just like really brief chats, but really cool. Reminded me of when I was that age. And like speaking to the Olympians and Paralympians of that time, it was just like this weird, again, a bit of like an out of body experience that's very, very memorable. Yeah, so pretty special.
So wearing the green and gold and representing Australia on the world stage, what's the weight of expectations there? And how do you look at yourself? How do you look at your actions? How do you look at your behaviors? Sometimes even small gestures because of social media. Because you know hundreds of thousands of kids are also looking at you as their role model.
Good question. A very good question. I in terms of like I guess the negatives of it, because I think that broadly it's like very positive and something that I feel very honored to um kind of to be told you're a role model is obviously very flattering. And something that I quite like as well. I really enjoy kind of um I don't know, being someone to share like knowledge and amongst like the swimming team and stuff. Kind of been through a lot of experiences, and now I'm kind of definitely on the older end. I get a lot out of kind of sharing my experience with some of the guys coming through, and really developing a lot of our leaders of the next generation is amazing. So it's something important to me. So I don't want to say it's negative at all, but I think in terms of like very much like our modern social media landscape and things like that, I'm a very political person, like deeply interested in politics and um, like have lots of ideas about policies and how we could make Australia the best place for as many of Australians as possible. But I'm not at all political on social media, so it's interesting that you kind of have to divorce a bit of yourself for kind of that public image as well. I think a lot of people that follow me are like younger swimmers and things like that as well. So I drop all the swear words and things like that that I would use in very regular rotation otherwise. So it is very much like a curated version of myself, I guess, which I find difficult. I like to be very like authentic. So kind of striking this balance between like this authentic version of me, but also I think a version that appropriately represents like swimming Australia and kind of I guess I hate it sounds a bit icky, but like the brand I want to put forward as well, like as a role model for the audience that does follow me, which isn't huge, but even around pool deck and stuff, I think it's just the way you act and carry yourself and the things you say. You do want to be careful because people do look up to you. So yeah, I guess there's that presence of mind, and I guess that's kind of the negatives of it. But I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm so honored to be able to say that like that is something that I have to think about. Yeah, I do think that the opportunity to be a role model is something that I've always like kind of wanted and was like kind of dreaming of as part and parcel of being a Paralympian when I was growing up. That yeah, I would love to have people look up to me the way that I looked up to the Paralympians, like Matt Cowdery and stuff when I was a little kid who's Australia's most decorated Paralympian. He trained and coached at my club kind of at the peak of his performance, and I was just in awe of him. So yeah, I don't know. I guess definitely a lot of positives, and some of those minor negatives.
You mentioned your brand, but I think it's your values also that are very important, because when somebody looks up to a role model, you don't only look up to them when they're swimming, you look up to them and go, oh, how does this person respond to something like this? Or how does this person respond to life if it's to happen to them? Is there pressure there now? And I love the fact that there's a curated version of you without the swear words.
Yeah.
But how do you, when you go through life and when you see certain challenging situations, is there a version of you that reflects a bit before you respond
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
you mature?
Yeah. I think also not as curated as I'd like to be. On if you watch any slow motion replays after my races, like as they usually do give like the immediate reactions, you touch the wall and like come up and look at your time, it's always a swear word and it's always in slow motion. I even had one of my senior executives at work point out, "Oh, you must not have been happy with that race." And I was like, "Ah."
In slow motion. In slow motion.
Yeah, it's terrible. But I remember what I was going to say on kind of the values piece because I think if people are like watching the Paralympics or watching a race that I'm in, the big things I want them to take away is that I'm out there having fun, and I'm out there being a good sport. Like, I think it's really cool. Like the bunch of guys that I race against, like we know each other quite well. A lot of them speak English, which is pretty amazing. But I also have learned to say good luck or like let's go in like or andiamo or like gambare or whatever it is. To be able to connect with them and just like have this real good sense of camaraderie of these people from all over the globe. And I feel like that's the really special thing that I'd like people to be able to take away is that like good sportsmanship. I think that's very much a real key quintessential Australian value. Although like the competition really matters to me, I cringe when I see like sportsmen and women that are competition first. And I know that's like kind of sacrilegious. You're supposed to be like, it's all about winning, like it's all about like putting in your all. But for me, I feel like above that is kind of how you win. So yeah.
Just throughout your career in the pool, whether it's Rio or Paris or the Commonwealth Games or something else, has there been a race, or maybe it's the Australian team tryout races? Has there been a race where you've particularly felt the weight of expectation to be really high?
Yeah, that Com Games 2018 home games, having my family in the stands. Any home games is unbelievable. It's next level. And yeah, I felt like I don't know, I just wasn't in the usual headspace. It had kind of overwhelmed me. I couldn't get into that flow state. I couldn't get into the process. I felt like I was just flopping around in the water, actually in the race, and it was such an unusual experience, kind of almost a bit of like an out of body experience, in that I had never not just kind of disengaged and gone straight into the process. So it was bizarre, and I think it was just that enormous weight of expectations that I was primarily putting on myself, but also like we had this enormous, amazing stadium filled to the brim of 80,000 spectators as well, obviously cheering for cheering for the home team. So yeah, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I have a lot of regrets about how I swam, but it made for a pretty touch and go fingernail race. And yeah, I learned from it a lot as well, in terms of just um, really needing to focus on the enjoyment of what I'm doing, really thinking about why I'm actually there rather than I got to win, which makes it so much harder. I think you put way more expectations on yourself if you're focused on a goal rather than focused on a larger, more nebulous motivation, like I'm here because I love it. I think is so much easier to calm yourself and focus and get back into that process mindset.
Each elite athlete has a different process they go through. People see the wins, people see the peak of the mountain. Not everyone sees the climb. Not everyone wants the climb either, although some of them want the gold. What are some of those sacrifices that you've had to make that you didn't know about when you aspired to be a Paralympic athlete?
A few. I think I kind of
Not drinking in your 20s?
Yeah, no, I thankfully feel like I'm very compatible with like I think the lifestyle has molded me a lot as well. And it's the lifestyle I've chosen because I love it. So it's never felt like a sacrifice. Um, I don't know. That's a good one. What sacrifices? Like so many. Obviously, I'm terrible at early morning. I'm not a morning person, so that one's always been difficult. Um, I feel like probably the big one is like moving away from family, and probably not spending quite as much time with the people that I love. But I think that is the reality for everyone. I think it's just about finding a balance where, um, if you're fortunate enough, especially if they live in a different location geographically, making that effort. And I feel like I finally got to a place in my career where I'm not so panicked about taking like a long weekend off and going home to see my gran and my mum, and yeah, the rest of my family. Whereas for a long stretch, maybe 8 or 9 years, I was a bit panicked about losing my technique and things like that. 3 days out of the water sometimes feels like it takes 3 times as long to get back into the swing of things. So 3 days out, then you feel like you've not yourself for 9 days and you've already lost 2 weeks of preparation. Whereas I feel like perhaps as a bit of an older athlete, having done it so many times, I feel like the technique comes back a lot quicker. And even if it doesn't, I feel like the priority is still being able to fit in and see family and yeah, just got, I guess, other priorities now. So I wish I could have that time back where I feel like I sacrificed a lot of time with family, in pursuit of this goal, which is a huge sacrifice. But I think I'm very fortunate in other ways that it doesn't feel like it's been a sacrifice, in terms of my own lifestyle or anything like that.
And how do you balance the requirements, the time that's needed to be the best version of the athlete that you want to be versus how do you balance your education with that?
Yeah, I think the challenge is overcoming like dominant culture or ways that you feel like you might need to be perceived. So in swimming, I think it's so easy to overtrain. I think we have like a really strong swimming culture in Australia, but a lot of that is tied to a lot of hard work. And I think people get into a bit of a contest against each other of how much hard work they can do. And I think that is really pervasive. And I try and escape that and do my own thing, even if people perceive me as maybe being lazy or whatever for doing something like that 800-meter session where I just focus on my technique or like dropping the load down. I think, for example, like over 100-meter sprint, it's a pretty short race. For me, it's about 1 minute and 8 seconds, ideally 1 minute 7. And for me, if I'm doing what a lot of people end up doing out of fear of looking like they're not doing enough, like 5-kilometer sessions twice a day, every day, I'm not training to be the best at that event. So I remember we used to do altitude camps, our AIS squad, up in Thredbo alongside the Campbell sisters and their coach. And I remember talking to them about their sessions because they did less than I expected, just in my mind being like, oh, they're two of Australia's most successful Olympians. Surely they do huge loads, but no, they were very specific with what they trained. And they were saying that if they did more additional load, they would be slower in their 50-meter or 100-meter sprints because that's not specific to what they're training for. Like they might get a little bit fitter and might be able to be stronger across a 200 or a 400, but that's not their specialty. And you can only have so much time and ability, and you need to be specific with how you're training. So I think that's one thing that's been important, is kind of shaking off those expectations of the athlete that I should be within the culture of the sport, and kind of blazing my own trail based on like the science and my own like plan with my coach.
For you to be the best version, it's not just about swimming. It's about diet, nutrition, strength training. What does your day look like?
Pretty busy. A lot of it actually dominated by work. I work full time in the government, which is probably not a surprise being Canberran. So it's pretty busy. I'm so lucky that my swimming side and my work side are both really flexible. And it is honestly just the most amazing, refreshing break for me to go into the office after swimming training. I feel like it's just a bit of a mental reset from like the focus of swimming. And then on the same parallel other end is going to training is such a nice like refresh and relaxation and different mindset again from being in the office. So like they work really hand in hand. So a usual day will be let's say like a Monday. Mondays are rough. Get up. No, Tuesday's probably the busiest day. Let's say Tuesday. So a Tuesday would be get up around 5:40, train 6.
What happened to the 340 discipline?
No, oh my goodness, I'm too old for that. Not a chance. My poor mum as well. Getting up, she used to sleep in the car on those ones. Yeah, too old for 350s. Get up around a pleasant 5:45. Train 6 till 7, a fairly short session, shorter than what a lot of other swimmers would do. That kind of comes back to me having that specific focus on the 100-meter backstroke. And then you get ready for work. I scoot to work, and then work through like the kind of standard 9 to 5 work day. Head to training around 4:45, 5 o'clock, and then train through to 6:30. And a lot of nights, like in our bit of arrangement, my wonderful wife, Ashley, will have dinner waiting for me. I'm so lucky to have that kind of thing from her support. And then, yeah, catch up with her a bit. I think that's really important because we don't get to see each other too much with our busy schedules. Play a bit of Mario Kart and then go to bed and rinse and repeat. Tuesday's usually the busiest day from like 6 until 6:30, like 12 hours of just go. But something like a Thursday is a little bit easier with just a morning session and then gym in the afternoon. So I try and fit in 10 swim sessions and 4 gym sessions a week. And when those were much longer kilometers, that would have been impossible to fit in with work. But now that I do a bit more of a specific tailoring to that 100-meter sprint event. Most of my sessions are about an hour long, so it's a lot easier to fit around work.
Speaking about work, I know it's a bit of a passion project of yours to ensure that we improve accessibility at work. What are some of those things that you have seen that officers are currently doing
Mm.
to ensure everyone is comfortable at work?
Yeah, I think we're in a bit of a renaissance for accessibility, which is fantastic. We've got a long way to go, but I think we're doing a lot better, and especially in the area where I work, in Australian Public Service, I think we're very much leading the way in terms of a really positive accessibility culture. And I feel like a lot of the positives that we make for people in the community with a disability have such like a big flow-on effect for everybody. So just for example, like making our lockers a little bit more accessible for like wheelchairs at our gym at work, gives more space for everybody. It's like a better space overall. And things like having multiple channels for job applications instead of just an email, or just sitting like face to face in a room, having the options for alternatives for someone who's deaf, for example, who might absolutely ace the job, but a job interview or like a recruitment process that we traditionally go through in a lot of the corporate world, is not friendly to a lot of requirements, even though the person with the accessibility needs might absolutely be able to nail the job. So I think probably one of the biggest things to be aware of is that you put exactly what you need the person to do in the job in the whatever your recruitment kind of campaign is to get people in. I think we try and make people jump through hurdles that actually don't necessarily apply to the job. So being a little bit more specific, because then you know that if the person is suitable in terms of that recruitment process, which is a bit more accessible, they're going to nail the job as well. And I think we can open up a lot of jobs to people with fantastic skills, from the community of people with a disability in Australia who have a lot to offer, and a lot of different perspectives and insights. I think living with a disability, talking about me being a bit stubborn before, I think that's where a lot of it comes from. I think it gives you a sense of amazing resilience a lot of the time, and I think it definitely develops your compassion and understanding for others as well. Perhaps being a bit more of a minority group, and understanding of intersectionality as well with a lot of other more minority groups. So I think it's a powerful thing for employers to be able to have people with a disability in their workforce to kind of have that out of the box thinking and really have that compassion and drive. I think adds a lot to organizations.
In your opinion, is there enough of a voice for people with a disability to actually change things, improve things? Is there enough of a voice currently?
That is such a good question. I think that yes, there is. For people like me, I feel like I don't really challenge the status quo a huge amount. I am privileged that I can fit in to the status quo a lot. I can work around kind of an able-bodied framework. There are a lot of people who can't do that. So the people you often hear, the voices you hear, are the voices of people like me who give a bit more of a rosy picture because they can fit in and they don't necessarily challenge the system to change as much. And they can be like, yes, things are great. So I feel like there is the ability for perhaps those, I don't know what better word to use, but like those people with the disability that can fit into the current like system. There is a fair bit of ability for them to voice and champion accessibility, but I think it's very minor very minor progress. I think what we don't hear enough of is the people, which is a lot of Australians who have more difficult accessibility requirements to fit into the system. I think it was a great example of something like that with, for example, accommodating people with hearing impairments into like the standard job interview kind of format is a good example of where we actually really need to think about how we can restructure what is something we just take as a default that works for the majority of people, but we really are cutting a small few out of so many jobs that they could do an amazing, they can contribute a huge amount of value to, and no one would lose anything. It would just take a lot of effort to change things, and we would get back into a cycle very easily of like offering multiple channels to respond, and just having maybe like a written option instead of having a face-to-face interview kind of thing, would make a huge difference to a lot of deaf people. So it's something like that, that the system needs to have a bit of a shake-up, and not necessarily in a negative way. We don't have to like slow things down or change any things in a negative way. It just needs change. And I think those voices, the ones that actually really threaten the easy status quo, are the ones we don't hear as much of, unfortunately. So there's a bit of that blend between there is voices speaking, but are they necessarily the voices that we need to hear, or are they sometimes just the voices that we want to hear?
Not getting a political Jesse to be political, but is there enough of a voice, in your opinion, coming from the political sphere or the leaders of Australia in the Australian Parliament to bring down that change, to bring in that change into the Australian public service to begin with?
Yeah, I think we're pretty fortunate. Australia, overall, our this is super controversial saying nice things about politicians, but I think a lot of them are there because they are passionate and they want to represent their constituents. And so I think overall there is good discussion. I think one of the big things that's lacking is representation. A lot of parliamentarians are coming from a lot of similar backgrounds, whether that's, I think the big one is also class. Just having that broad diversity of lived experience amongst Australia's politicians that reflects the beautiful, diverse Australia that we live in, I think would add a lot of value to our policies coming out of government. Yeah, whether that's like the international, like global, like culturally and linguistic diversity, whether that's people with like lived experience of disability, or yeah, like that class diversity as well. I think they're all really important things to a healthy society, to have our decision makers and our policy makers with kind of that diverse experience amongst them.
And I think it's a global thing also. Like, I'm looking back at Sri Lanka, we just had our first visually impaired minister elected into parliament, and they had to change how the Hansard is now able to be accessed by this minister, because he needs to read the Hansard to see what it said in it. So I think it just changes mindsets. And there is a challenge there, but there's a huge opportunity there, because I think you were spot on. If we are to get the best person for the job, then we just need to take the time to rethink how we get that best person there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it would have been quite a difficult trail to blaze for that Sri Lankan minister.
Yeah.
But hopefully many people following him will be able to benefit from the difficult fight that he's fought as well. And there'll be more wealth of knowledge coming through in the wake of that as well. Yeah.
So for an organization that wants to get someone that's the right fit for the job, that may have some disabilities, what kind of supports are currently available?
We're so lucky. We live in like actually, no, sometimes it's a bit of a curse. The age of information. You have everything at your fingertips, especially Canberrans. I'm assuming a lot of the audience will be Canberrans, and therefore a lot of public servants, folks. We have amazing resources across federal and state governments for all sorts of accessibility training. If you're not a public servant, there's things like Australian Disability Network, which have just an absolute plethora of valuable resources. Honestly, like 40 minutes of like watching YouTube videos that they have, and you'll feel so much more comfortable on like every step of something, like using the deaf example before, from recruitment in terms of adjusting recruitment measures all the way through to supporting them in the daily like working environment with the whole team. It does not take a huge amount. And yeah, Australian Disability Network is probably a great place for a lot of those resources. But any quick Google will turn up a wealth of information. Yeah.
Jesse, are you able to fully reach your career goals in the way you're currently set up?
Interesting. I think absolutely yes. I definitely have anxiety around things like NDIS, which is always a bit of a political chip. That's kind of because it is a very expensive program, but I think in my experience the payoff has been amazing. I've been so well looked after that I am able to achieve like my goals in sport and the workplace. But if I wasn't looked after, I don't know that I would be able to do either of those things. Yeah, it's so I'm getting kind of thrown because it is a bit upsetting to think about like how much my hands, my life is in the hands of like the way that we want to structure our social safety net in Australia. Um, because yeah, it is very much shaped my life, and I've been privileged that it's shaped my life for the better. And I hope that I've overall been a net contributor. But I think for um, people in Australian citizens for their own sake deserve like the dignity and like self-determination that things like NDIS provide. And I've been a recipient of that, and I can absolutely say that I have been able to live a life with agency and self-determination thanks to the country that I'm lucky to live in. Many other places around the world, I wouldn't have had that same privilege. So yeah, I think that's something that we should be really considerate of in Australia. And I really hope that as many people are on board with kind of um, supporting people in a way that I've been so lucky to benefit from.
Switching a little bit back to your goals and what's influenced you. We touched briefly on your family's pedigree in the poll. Reflecting on Jesse today, with what you've learned, with your maturity, with what you've been able to do, how has some of that, how has some of your family's pedigree influenced you? What are some of those stories you've heard about the family that you're very, very keen to take forward, or that motivates you?
A great one that definitely motivated me was getting my ass absolutely handed to me by my gran in tennis. She would have been in her 80s, early 80s, and I would have been like 16 or 17. And I wanted to play tennis with mum, and mum was like, oh no, like too busy today, but like you should definitely go and play with gran. Um, and I was like, no, like I don't want to like she's gonna injure herself or something like that. And mum played it very coy. She was like, no, 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 no. Just like don't be crazy. Like don't be yourself where you're very competitive. Just be hit gently or whatever. And so I went down to our local tennis courts with Gran, and the first thing she did was, as some of my friends were walking by, and I'm pretty sure there was also a some of the popular group and a girl I had a crush on at the time walking by the tennis courts. One of the first things she did was ace me. Um, so thanks, Mum, for not giving me any of the information about my grand's sporting pedigree. Um, but yeah, I think we're just a bit of a competitive family overall, and I think that's definitely embedded a lot of competitive drive in myself, which I'm thankful for in many regards. Um, and I reflect on playing table tennis with my mom a lot. I remember losing a lot and thinking like maybe I would go a little bit easier on my kids, but no, I think that was definitely a good thing in terms of um like we were this household that were very competitive, and we loved our sport, and I got to try my hand at so many different things, which was amazing to kind of settle on the one thing that I really loved. Another little like family stories. Well, not a story, but I wish I had gotten to see my grandfather swim more. I've seen videos of him swim, and it's eerie. It kind of looks so much, even though we're like, um, with my like double leg amputation, you'd think that I would swim so differently. I can't tell the difference. If you were to show me a video that was like a similar quality to like a video of today, I would take a while to spot him doing butterfly, my granddad Stan, and myself. It's weird. I don't know how that's happened. Like completely different swimming techniques of the times. Like you would have been taught so differently. I've got such a different like body plan in the water. And yet we look so identical. It's eerie. So yeah, I wish I'd been able to swim with him a bit. He passed away when I was quite young, but amazing watching videos of him. And also interesting to see some of his like medals and things like that. That Dad has got a huge collection of his achievements and cups and trophies, and looking at some of the times that are etched on them. We've come a long way as well. Like seeing him like when he was based in Singapore. He's got like a Singapore 400-meter freestyle champion, and he's got like the time, which he was very good for the time, but you'd probably be struggling to make a final in like a 11 or 10 or 11-year-old 400-meter freestyle these days. But he was Asian champion at the time, so yeah, we've come a long way. But he was still a very very talented swimmer for his time. So I wish I had more time with him as well to chat and kind of learn from him.
Your family was cheering you on at the Commonwealth Games. It's a blessing and some pressure. But what are some of those moments that you've had the time to win something and go see Gran or sit down with your mom? And what are some of those things that you've heard from them that have really touched you?
Yeah, I think probably the big one, it's probably more fresh in my mind, but I hope it always stays fresh, is after the Paris relay or last year, sorry, where we won gold, and it was an absolute shock, and it was the first medal that I had ever won of any color at a Paralympic Games. I've been doing this international competing thing for my whole life pretty much. Um, and they've been my partner and my mum have been on the journey with me like every step of the way. And after the race, the first thing I did pretty much when I got back to like my stuff was pick up my phone and give a group call to my partner Ash and my mom, and just like actually no, sorry, I joined a group call they were already in, and they were just screaming and crying, and yeah, I'll just never forget that. It was the middle of the night. Poor, poor both of them. I don't think they got much sleep, and to just feel that support is, yeah, it's very memorable, and I feel really lucky, and yeah, I hope that memory always stays fresh because it just feels really special.
And in a setting where you have a group sport, how do you guys support each other? Because you're still 4 or 5 because you swap people out. You need to. Different individuals, different athletes, different egos in there, but you still have the highs and lows.
Yeah.
How do you support each other?
It's so much better as part of a team. Even in the relay team, in marshalling was so much easier. I'm usually very nervous. I put on my Taylor Swift very loud, and I'm usually very reserved and not much of a singer or dancer because both of those I'm absolutely terrible at. But pour everybody else in marshalling to like dance and sing away the nerves. That's what I do. But as a team, you just feel so much more at home and so much more supported. It's this really it's more of a shift towards excitement, which is really cool. But I don't know how people do like a team sport kind of thing, like soccer or cricket or something like that. I just feel like the pressure that I put on myself is so great that if things don't go your way, I feel like I would really beat myself up a little bit too much. So I'm glad that I do an individual sport from that regard. But I feel really privileged to be part of that relay in Paris. It feels different. You somehow manage to lift. I often feel like I swim worse in relays, but I always go quicker. I feel like I am maybe not moving as fast when I'm in the water. I think because I'm just so focused, I'm probably overrating. Like I really, really, even though I want to win, um, like all the time, just something about it, you unlock like an extra 0.1% having that team environment. And even though sometimes I feel like maybe I'm not executing my race plan as well because I'm like, I owe these guys my best possible performance. Sometimes I put a little bit too much into the race, particularly early on, and I struggle. That lactate is really, the piano is falling my shoulders on the back end. I somehow managed to pull something from somewhere that I didn't even know I have, and go faster. So it definitely motivates you. It definitely is exciting. And uh, I know it's very bonding with the people that you get to do it with as well. You feel this special connection and a bit of a united front, and just walking out and holding hand, like raising each other's hands when you go out behind the blocks. Um, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I'm trying not to like get too emotional because I'll fall apart a little bit. But yeah, it was a really special moment to be able to have the team, that relay team around me in Paris while we all like kind of shared and chased a dream together.
And in that team setting, what's the one thing or two things that you can remember that someone's said to you that has had some impact on you?
Um, I think oh, a lot of swear words like let's effing get it. And like just the determination of like someone right there or like everyone right there, like in a group hug, just like the emotions flowing, the passion flowing is powerful. Um yeah, you can't like get any more motivation than that. And then not so much something that someone has said, but to experience the two heat swimmers. We had Callum and Kira who got us through to the final, and they swapped out for Alexa and Tim Hodge, who had really busy programs. So we rested them in the morning, and then our finals team was a bit different. So Callum and Kira were watching in the stands. They're very much part of the relay. If we win, they also win gold. Um, and they were obviously so nervous, like not having that control of the situation, I think makes you even more nervous. And I will never forget when we came into like the media zone, which was like 70-meter long hallway with like all the media on one side waiting to talk to you. So we had like a 15 minutes ahead of us. Um, Callum and Kira, who barely knew each other, were 70 meters down there, like jumping, like hugging, crying, and all of our relay team just ran past all the media, which we weren't supposed to do, and just like tackled them in a huge group hug, all like crying and laughing together in disbelief. And that was pretty special. Just like that like run down there, which seemed to last forever, but also go like so quickly, considering it's a very long time, and we're definitely swimmers, not runners. So it was probably quite a spectacle. But no, so special just to see them like losing their minds afterwards. Yeah, something I won't forget.
And that's that gratitude because they helped you
Mm.
get to where it is. It's an interesting one. Do a lot of people understand the dynamics of a group environment, or being an individual swimmer, did you take a little while to understand the group dynamic?
People are sometimes a bit afraid of relays because there's the pressure. So in terms of embracing it, I think it's perhaps not not to be too pretentious. I think it's people understand it subconsciously, but perhaps they haven't like been able to really assess and like self-actualize and be okay with failure or not living up to their own expectations that they feel like they owe to the group. So in that way, I think that people probably understand what the group environment means and kind of especially in the sporting world, like are usually very excited to be part of a relay, but I think there's that trepidation as well. And that's definitely something that I've had a lot of. But I think in more recent years, just knowing that I am going to go out there and like give my absolute best. And if it's not enough on the day, like I left it all in the pool, and that I would never hold it against anyone if they had a bad swim. It just happens sometimes, and we all know that we're all there to leave it all in the pool. No one is trying to let down the team or anything. It is a very supportive and caring space. Um, so I think there is that kind of hurdle, like that own self-imposed hurdle about expectations of the team, that maybe people sometimes struggle with. But for me, it was kind of becoming aware of that and working around that has definitely helped me to be able to perform and manage the pressure of competing in a relay.
Jesse, who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Definitely my mom. I don't know if that came across. Probably did. Um, Definitely my wife, Ashley. She is amazing. I've learnt so much. We've been together for nearly 11 years now. So yeah, learnt so much from her. Very inspired by like her. I feel like she's made me come out of my shell a lot. inspired by the way that she's able to stick up for other people, which is really cool. I think I'm a bit too much of a people pleaser sometimes, and she like has many famous moments. Even going back to when she was a little kid, like I think they have lost more than one soccer game, her primary school soccer team, because she felt like the other team or people on her own team weren't being nice to other people, and she would like abandon her position and forget about the game to go and teach them a lesson or something like that. And that's a skill that I think I haven't had. Um, it doesn't come naturally in terms of being too much of a people pleaser. Sometimes I prioritize the comfort of everybody over being loyal, and actually being super loyal is such an inspiration to be more like that. And in terms of swimming, definitely Matt Cowdery. Um, Privileged to see him at his absolute prime, and my very first team was his last team, which I'm also fortunate for. Seeing, yeah, him in his element competing and being alongside that was pretty much a dream come true. Having grown up seeing him win just an absolute bag of Paralympic medals, that was definitely inspirational, and he always conducted himself with amazing sportsmanship. So seeing that was definitely a great role model and inspired me to I wanted to be like him. So yeah, I was fortunate to have him in my orbit, and then to be able to share that team with him as well was something special.
What has the role of coaches and mentors been in your journey?
Everything. I mean, a lot of them are the ones already listed there, like my partner Ash and my mom. Definitely coaches is huge. It's kind of like a family relationship. Um, Especially if you're with them for a long time, which a lot of my coaches have been by 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years sometimes. You get to know each other really well. You travel together. I think you really need that strong partnership where you trust each other. Because especially for me, my best performance is not or my best technique is not necessarily a cut and paste from like an Olympic kind of technique, like an able body technique. So there's a lot of pioneering that I have to do with my coach, and it's about like them trusting whether I'm feeling things right, or like kind of taking that feedback and understanding where I'm coming from to interpret things. So there's this huge amount of understanding each other and give and take to be able to have the best result. And I think to be able to challenge each other as well, there needs to be this really strong underlying level of respect to know that you have each other's best interests at heart, to be able to put your egos aside, because there's often a lot of like critique, and it's a two-way street as well, absolutely, to be like, no, I think the technique that you're teaching me now, I actually feel this way in the water. I don't think it's helping, even though they've been like, this has been hammered into them as one of like the most important aspects or something. For them to be able to trust you in that is huge. So yeah, I'm really lucky that my coaches have looked after me. Like Yuri, I mentioned at AIS was amazing. Definitely like not just a coach, but very much like a father figure as well. And my coach now, Laura, is amazing. Like she's been such a good support in this part of my life with full-time work. I've had to have so much flexibility in work and sport that not many coaches would afford. And so we really have like this equal relationship where we understand and trust each other in working towards like our outcomes. So it's pretty cool. I'm pretty lucky.
How does a young swimmer find the coach that works best for them?
It's actually really difficult. I think sadly, a lot of coaches get pressured into that overtraining mindset in swimming. So I would say look for a coach that gives you agency as a swimmer, even a young swimmer, like one that really wants you to drive things, and one that holds you to account as well. I think is really important. Like they need to be like, hey, like I don't think you gave like that was a descending set, and like you didn't do it quite right, or like I think you didn't quite push to where we needed to be for that, in a really like understanding and compassionate way. You don't need to be like, that was terrible, like you've let yourself down like straight away. Like I think a lot of coaching can be negativity driven. And I think you can have that feedback and be really supportive, like make that kind of that sandwich where it's like, hey, this is going great. Here's what we can do better. Like, let's get out there and get it. Like that positivity sandwich, is what I think you really need to be looking for. But not in that they're afraid to hold you to account. I think that's really important, to have that honest dialogue with your coach. Even yeah, that sounds sophisticated, but absolutely applies at the junior levels as well. To have that really strong relationship, where you have that communication about what you want to do, and are you enjoying it, and what can I do to help you enjoy it if maybe there's some fundamental aspects you do enjoy, but maybe you're just going through a bit of a rough patch. That flexibility, I think, is really important, and that will come through in the way that the coach will communicate with the athlete. Yeah, and I think it is also, as you get older, on the athlete to take that role as well. Because I do think with particularly swimming lives in a culture of that very coach led as opposed to that joint led. I'm just trying to think about one of our things is coach led, but it's meant to be like it's one of our sayings in Swimming Australia is like coach led, expert supported. Was it athlete led? I'm trying to remember, but yeah, I think it's all about that equal partnership. And yeah, having agency as an athlete is really important, and a good coach will bring out that agency.
And as you progress through your swimming journey, again, for somebody starting off, how do you have the conversation with whoever you need to have the conversation with when you want to change a coach? Because it's not always a partnership that will gel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very rare. I think I've only changed coach once ever, and that I just really haven't been in that situation. I'm very fortunate. It's really difficult. It can put you back a lot. Like changing programs, there's a lot of new stuff to get used to, different sets, different coaching styles, different communication styles, often entirely different like support networks around your like physios or biomechanists, once you're at the elite level as well. So yeah, it can be a lot. Not something that I take lightly. And my coach actually at the moment has got a promotion, I guess you'd call it. She's joining a New South Wales Institute of Sport squad here in Canberra, which is awesome. So it's going to be a bit of an interesting minefield to negotiate that. So I guess trying to not put the anxieties first, and really not leap to anything either. Just take time to find what's right. I've got a bit of a journey ahead of me this year, to whether I move with my coach Laura, or try my hand with the new coach that's coming in. There's a few complications around like state institute scholarships and all those sorts of things. So it's going to be a bit of an interesting journey. And I think just to be patient and to really communicate clearly with everyone involved so that no one feels like they've been hurt or anything. I feel like perhaps it feels like you are hurting someone's feelings if you're like talking to other coaches or things like that. But I think the best thing you can do is be really open in your communication, especially if things aren't working at the program, or like club or whatever it is that you're at. Word travels fast within like small communities, so being really upfront and clear and compassionate in your communication, I think will go a really long way.
What's the career journey of a Paralympic athlete? And I know it can be different to different people, but you start really young. You do lots of sport. You find the one that you really like, and you make progress through. What's that? What's the span of it? We've touched briefly about what's coming up and how the body will hold up for it. But what's the approximate span like?
As long as you want it to be. I think just elaborating on that a little bit, if we're kind of speaking to younger sports people within Australia, I think a really big tip that I would give is yourself or your parents being in touch with the peak sporting organisation in your state. So that would be something like volleyball ACT or like swimming ACT. Elsewhere, like soccer, Queensland. Like it's so easy that this stuff is at your fingertips with a quick Google. Sometimes it's really hard to know where to look, but that's a really good jumping off point is that your sporting body will have so many resources and just reaching out and having that communication with them will give you a really good idea about where you might want to go. But yeah, I also think trying lots of different things is really key when you're younger. I was so fortunate to try like little athletics, like multiple different kinds of tennis.
Just ask Gran how good she's at tennis before
Yeah.
you go out and get humiliated. I got that now.
Yeah, that was the end of my tennis career after that one. Very humbling. So yeah, I think that would definitely be some advice on that one. But in terms of like career pathway, beyond figuring out what you want, I think it's for me, I've been very fortunate that I've had a really long career. And I think a really key one is finding that high performance squad. And for me, that was moving away from Adelaide to Canberra to come here to the AIS. And yeah, I think that's really looked after my longevity as well in terms of having that real key focus of that support team around me to look after my well-being as well. A lot of people have their careers end in really, really unfortunate ways with injuries or burnout from just not enjoying it anymore. And I've just managed to avoid those by being really tactical about how I've approached my career.
And what are those tactical moves that you've made, Jesse, intentionally to, try to recover well from injury, try to avoid burnout, try to go to your supports with the wife or the mom there? What are those intentional moves that you've made?
It's absolutely relying on that support network. I think it's also I talked a bit about like that dominant culture, being confident to go your own way, not feeling like you need to be influenced by the way everyone else is training. Yeah, I feel like especially hard workers, they put a lot of pressure on themselves to be the hardest worker. And that, especially for me, I do a lot of like not doing much kick or anything like that. There's a lot of load going through my shoulders. So, yeah, the longevity of my career has definitely come from coaches that have understood that. And we've thought outside the box or gone against like predominant culture in terms of perhaps a bit of overtraining to look after myself to make sure I haven't ended things prematurely.
And if there were a couple of things that you can change, how the setup is, how the system is, how the structure is for athletes with disabilities that are making their way through the system, what would some of those things be?
Yeah, I think just that like it's so hard to find your way through the system when you're new to it. There's no one that comes along and tells you like this is where you should be looking for this or this funding or this grant or like these are the pathways. You just have no idea, and it takes years to find your way through. And I think to some extent it's a bit of an intractable problem. There's no easy solution. But just and as is happening, like government funding for like lots of pathways and grassroots programs that give enough support to these community organizations so that they have the staff to go out and speak to athletes or just like young Australians and who are involved in sport and talk to them about what options there are available to them. And I don't think you get a huge amount of that. You do have to find your own way, and you could have these experts out there much more prolific and engaged amongst the community and community sports, really supporting people to find their own way and provide just a little bit of guidance goes a long way as well.
In terms of mindset, for somebody who has a disability, but somebody who also, and that's where the funding, I think, is very, very important. Somebody who doesn't have lots of resources at their disposal. How do you strengthen your mindset, or how did you strengthen your mindset when you needed to?
Kind of leapfrogging off that, like when things got challenging or when I came like up against barriers, especially as a younger kid, I guess I think one that's particularly pertinent these days and to a lot of people is like it's expensive to have a young family. Again, I'm not dropping any like secret wisdom. Everyone knows that. But if I can share from like kind of my experience about the process that I was lucky that like my mom went through, for example, with me, like she joined the committee and she like pestered the local council and government for like community grants and things like that. And there are lots of things out there. It's just that you need to go and have a look for them. And yeah, just hearing that there are those opportunities, I think helps. And having a look, you will turn up lots of opportunities, and people willing to help. And I was so fortunate that that mom did that, and that that was kind of a bit of a process because we came up against a lot of financial barriers. I think that's a huge one. Obviously, like there was difficult mindset barriers, but yeah, we didn't have a huge amount of money, and it's a luxury to be involved in a sporting pursuit and send your kids to interstate and sometimes overseas competitions is crazy. Difficult to achieve financially. So yeah, just getting involved in those committees and finding the grants that are out there will make a huge difference because yeah, you only have so much time as a parent to be able to I don't know, work and be a parent. And being able to leverage those clubs and community organizations to support with like your kid's journey or the club's journey makes a huge difference and made a big difference in my career and actually being able to make that leap from a junior to on the international stage was some of the funding that my mum worked really hard for grants and stuff. So yeah.
What's next, Jesse? What's next for you in the journey?
So we're working towards Singapore World Championships in September this year. Should be really cool. Definitely tune in. Well, I'm trying to think what broadcast it will be on. I'm not sure what it'll be on. I don't want to promote someone that is not going to be on, I guess. But yeah, keep an eye out for that one. That'll be really exciting. We should have the band back together again with the relay team. We were about a second and a half, maybe 2 seconds off the Dutch team who we managed to beat. We managed to put the swim together on the day in Paris, and they were a little bit off, but they are still the world record holders. So we would love to smash their world record this year in at World Champs. So that's definitely the next immediate goal. But other than that, yeah, just working and just enjoying life, trying to continue to find the work-life balance, and go year by year, balancing, yeah, what I've really enjoyed with my swimming and my work.
Jesse, thank you for making the time. I'm honored and humbled to learn from you, but also to keep admiring the things you do and to cheer for you.
Thank you. I hope it's not been too boring, too rambly, but yeah, it's been a privilege.
It's been fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome.
A massive thank you to Crown Plaza Canberra for hosting this episode of the podcast. If you are looking for really nice accommodation in close proximity to Canberra CBD, or if you want well-appointed meeting spaces, check out Crown Plaza Canberra. Thank you again.